Oh,
Cold.
it's a chilly day.
It is.
It is. It's a chilly day, and we're here on the farm with Mark Gillanders, and he's hosting the second farm walk, and it's the second in our podcast series, Organic Matters, with the Irish Organic Association. Mark, we'll let the crowd mill through. It's a big crowd, isn't it?
It is. It's good.
I think there's over 50 here.
Yeah. Oh, there would be. Yeah.
You've got a really interesting story. So, at the minute, you're growing wheat and you're making milling flour.
Yeah.
That's not how you started off. So
No,
can you give us a
no.
bit of a history? How did you start
I suppose
off?
really this is a livestock farm. It's always been a livestock farm back this 50 years. My father used to milk as well here. It was a dairy farm. When I took over in 2004, I was just beef, and I really quit the milking, and I had an off-farm job basically, and in 2009 I was making kitchens off farm, and then 2009 the building crash came, and I had an asset here, and I thought I'm going to have to make something of this asset. And really I seen what was happening with the organic beef, or the conventional beef, and I thought, well, it can't be any worse than what I'm at. I'll basically try organics, and I didn't really know much about it at the time, and just everything started to work. Started growing a wee bit of grain to feed the animals, because the price of organic grain, and just everything started to click and work. More grain was grew, and was finishing organic beef from suckler to beef.
And did it make a difference to your bottom line? Like, did you start seeing the difference? But I mean, not just your bottom line, but to you yourself, were you just more actively engaged? Because sometimes, like say, growing up on the farm, you just do the same thing as your parents did, whereas it sounds like you just took your own path.
I did, and even my father was a bit pessimistic slightly at the time, as most. I'm listening to lots of farmers round and about, a few farmers that have gone organic and that, and it's mainly their father or mother or whatever would like to see them doing something different. And but after a while, after doing it and seeing things work and seeing how well it worked, basically, you know, it did come round at that stage.
We're in Drumlin country, we're in Patrick Kavanagh country, we're looking for these grey stony soils.
You've got the stones.
I got the stones, yeah. You don't usually associate this part of the world with wheat, do you?
No, you haven't really. And a lot of people sort of look at you twice when you have, say, wheat up here. But no, it's working. It's working really well, and really good quality wheat. Like last year, with bushel weights right up to 88 kph and 13% protein. Like, you really can't produce any better.
And put it into layman's terms for me as well, because you know, we import nearly all of our flour. That's why when the Beast from the East tasted a couple of years ago, there wasn't any bread on the shelves. You know, you couldn't make any.
Yeah.
But you were milling Irish flour in Ireland. But I mean, what's the perception of, like, say, conventionally, what protein rate does wheat have to be at for flour, and why didn't we think we could grow it here?
It would have to be around that 12% for strong flour, 12.5 to 13, all the better if it's 13 for strong flour, which is your bread flours. You have your lighter flours, or your cream flours there, that would be a smaller protein, but to make bread you need that strong flour.
And say, I know kind of the brass tacks figures on it, around kind of like you're growing peas as well, beans as well. I mean, how much per tonne are you getting for your beans?
600 a tonne for the organic beans, and
You happy with that?
Oh yeah.
And that's higher than like conventional rate, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it is absolutely. I'm not sure exactly what a conventional price is at the moment, but it would be. Well, it's 20%. So it'd be 26% protein. A very digestible bean. So.
And if people want a bag of flour, how much is that?
Oh, well, online 5 kilo bags are €20 a bag. So, and 1 kilo bags in the shop are €4.
Kevin here has
So
a full stand. You put in a full stand.
I think you're getting cold back, so I'll catch up with you later, and might catch up with a few people as well. But, we'll have another catch up in a bit. But I'll let you get back to the crowd. We've just pulled away from the crowd a little bit, and I'm joined by the Development Officer in the Irish Organic Association, Grace Maher. Grace, why did we stop growing milling wheat in Ireland? What was the reason behind it?
Mainly cheaper imports, really. So traditionally wheat was grown widely for milling, and there was lots of mills all around the country.
We think of oddlums.
Yeah, and lots of companies like that, that did it regionally. So we certainly did it at one point and did it well, but then the focus switched a bit more to grass, and also, as I said, cheaper imports. So what we're seeing in the last few years is some farmers who are looking at growing wheat, and from an organic perspective, really it's looking at extending your arable rotation, because it's quite a strong focus on oats because of market demand.
Is this going to make a difference? Because you mentioned there importing, and we know what's going on in the Ukraine at the minute, and it's been touched upon that I think a third of our wheat comes from the Ukraine and Russia combined. I mean, so what's going to happen going forwards? Do you think the market will be more persuaded to buy Irish flour as opposed to imports? Is it going to make a difference to price?
Well, yes. I mean, surely wheat is a global commodity, so like everything at the moment in terms of production from that part of the world, it is, it's a bit unsure, but I think in the longer term it will question where our wheat is coming from and why we're not growing it in Ireland, if we can grow it in Ireland, which we clearly can.
Cost wise though, I mean, per kilo or per tonne, I mean, importing it, is it still going to be cheaper than buying it from Irish producers?
I suppose if we look specifically at organics, a lot of the organic flour being imported is cheaper, so it would be probably a third of the price of homegrown. But Brexit has complicated that in terms of sourcing it, and I think as we get more volume, like everything, once you get more volume of it grown in Ireland, the pricing may be a bit more competitive, but I do think consumers are looking for Irish flour, and that is the driver really. If consumers are a bit more informed, farmers can grow it, the market will be there in terms of evolution as well.
Mark, when he was talking earlier, said he started with growing wheat just for his own use as an animal feed. I mean, for any farmer who might be doing that, or might be thinking of growing wheat just as animal feed is starting out and then maybe expanding it, I mean, are there certain varieties that they should be looking at? Would you have any advice for them?
On the variety side of it, because from an organic perspective, the varieties that are being, say, on the recommended list from the department, they're all grown for conventional production, so we have absolutely minimal level of knowledge about what specifically works on organic farms, and that's a European problem, but it's very, from an Irish perspective, there's almost no information there, and that's a drawback, because you're asking organic farmers to select varieties which are being bred for conventional production and they don't work in organic scenarios, so that's a difficulty. And at the moment, the wheat varieties that farmers like Mark are using are coming from the countries like Germany, which aren't always relatable in terms of climate, in terms of meeting those industry specifications like protein, like moisture levels, so that is something to consider. But certainly farmers who start out growing it for livestock, it's a good place to start, because obviously the livestock will consume it, so you're not actually creating problems in terms of generating a crop that isn't successful. But I would encourage farmers who are looking at extending your arable rotation, because in an organic situation, you've got to look over the lifetime of the rotation, so not just looking at 1 year. So if you're looking at a 5 or 6 year arable rotation, yes, oats will probably be one of your dominant crops, but crops like wheat have huge potential in terms of generating revenue, but also kind of maintaining a diverse rotation, which is key in terms of fertility management, in terms of weed management, and that's where real scope is there for wheat. But I do think broadly we need to look at more crops for human consumption. I mean, that's really where we need to be looking at in terms of addressing the whole plant-based diets as well. We can grow more crops for human consumption in Ireland, and we need more information, more knowledge about varieties which are good for that.
And I mean, you've done a lot of work on this as well, because we think, 50 years ago when we were growing a lot of our own wheat, I mean, imagine that we were using heritage varieties, and you've done a lot of work on heritage varieties. Is that something that you could see could be expanded?
Yeah, a couple of years back we did a trial on 3 organic farmers, who kindly gave us their plots, access to land, and so we did heritage trials just to see would they grow, and we compared them against modern varieties. And obviously one of the main parameters that farmers measure is yield. So when I looked at the yield at the end of the season, the heritage varieties did just as well. There was no difference from a statistical analysis point of view. There was no difference between the heritage varieties and the modern varieties.
Which was that in not just yield but also protein as well?
Yeah. Actually on the protein levels they were actually very high. Some of them went up to 16%. So as I said, it was 11% is the specification. So absolutely no problem to reach protein levels. Almost in some scenarios it could be a little bit too high in terms of protein. So protein wasn't an issue. And so yield is one of the things that farmers look at. But you do have to kind of look right across the board. And like everything, you have to have a market for it if you're growing for it. But on the heritage, absolutely huge potential there. Not only from, the actual end product, but looking at the whole agrobiodiversity and looking at access to genetic diversity, which is a huge part of agriculture going forward.
Thank you very much. I think the crowd is moving again, so we better move with them. We've come away from the main group for a minute, and Gavin Tully is here with me. Gavin, you've been pinpointed as a farmer to talk to. You've come from Wexford today, I think.
That's right.
To Camolin. And you have a very interesting setup on your farm, because there's a kind of cyclical thing on most organic farms where you're not using artificial fertiliser, so you need some form of manure. So a lot of farmers keep livestock for that, but you have a stockless farm. So how does that work for you? Just explain to, say, the lay listener that doesn't know the situation.
Well, I do import nutrients from other farmers in the area. I import dairy sludge as well. But I usually we sow crops with protein mixtures, like combo crops, and then we undersow them with white mustard sometimes as well. I went away from winter crops a few years ago because I found it hard to keep them growing in the spring, that they kind of go into a stalemate. They come out of winter and they're looking for a hit to get going, but there's no hit there for them, you see. So we stick with the spring crops now, and I find them much easier to manage.
That's interesting, because we're here in Monaghan today and we can hear the wind blowing, and it is quite bitter and the shed's rattling. But Mark said that he was doing mainly spring crops as well. Is that something in the organic system that it just makes it more difficult to do winter crops?
Well, I'd say Mark is probably on the same. He's having the same problem as I am, that when the winter crops come out of the winter into the spring, there's just nothing there to get them going. It takes so long to get going that you'd nearly be as well off with a spring crop. And you'd have less weed problems then as well, because you have the weeds. The weeds will grow coming out of winter. There's no fear of them. They're happy enough to grow ahead. But I'd agree with what Mark is saying there about that. Like that, I find it easier.
When did you get into organics, and was it always a stockless farm?
It was always a stockless farm. Yeah, I got into it in 2015.
You had no interest in chasing sheep or
no, absolutely
no
not.
calving
I
cows?
let other people bring in sheep and let them chase their own sheep around the place. The cover crops are grazed, not every year, but we actually have sheep on the premises at the moment now. But I'm quite happy to let them run around in the rain, and I'll just look out from the window.
Yeah, I was calving cows last night, so I think I'm quite envious actually.
I don't miss that either now, because I did have stock in the past. I know how it's all done, but it just doesn't appeal to me anymore.
And what year did you convert to organics, and what was the thinking behind it?
2015 was when we started. We dabbled a bit. We put in 25% of the land just to try it out, and can't really think what the motivation was at the time, but sure, you're going to say there's a financial influence there, yes. The fact that I've been spraying chemicals since I was 16 years old probably was another thing that I used to worry about, that I used to be spraying past one point in the field. I used to always think when I passed it, the water well was there. I just always think to myself, what am I doing here? Like, you'd wonder about sometimes, but no, it was something that was on my mind for maybe even 10 or 15 years before I went, but wasn't brave enough, I suppose. And in the end, then I just decided we'd try the 25%. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And if it, as it happens, it did work. So the following year, then the rest of the land went in.
What's the end point for all your crops? Do they go into animal feed, or do they go into food production, or what do they go?
Yeah, they went mostly for animal feed up until last year. Last year we grew the single batch of malt and barley for boar malt. So I'd say we'll be going back towards the combi crops now again this year.
Did you get a premium on it for being organic?
Yeah, there is a premium.
And was it worth it?
It was, and it was nice, and it was lovely to get the check at the end of October. Everything was fantastic, but at the same time I kind of missed the combi. There was more yield out of the combi crops, and in the end there would have been more money as well because I had a higher yield. I know the value wasn't as high, but still I would have had a better yield, and you'd be using the protein crops to keep your nitrogen levels up reasonably well as well, you see. So I've lost out on that now because of the straight malt and barley.
It's a bit of a science, isn't it?
It is a bit of science, yeah, but like science is grand, but Mother Nature comes along then and says, we're going to laugh at you now and see what you think it is. They give you something else to get over. But yeah, it is a bit of a science, and I always say to people, like, your farm is different than my farm, and you might only be 5 kilometres away and it'd still be different. Like, and people come to these farm walks, and it's great to come and get ideas and see how other people are getting over their challenges in it. But realistically, you have to make your own mistakes to really learn.
What was the biggest learning point for you?
There's been a good few of them. Probably the combo crop or the cover crops has been the greatest learning achievement. I wish I had known cover crops were as valuable years ago. I just see the way the soil, when you plough them now, the soil is so brown and so full of roots and organic matter and structure, we call it. Whereas in the past we would have been ploughing, and sure we would have been going out spraying off the crops, and then like the clay would just be pure clay. There'd be no root structure at all. That's probably the greatest achievement of the whole thing is the cover crops. Hurdles in the past, I grew peas years ago and swore I'd never grow them again, and now I grow them on an almost annual basis. We just hit and miss with them, but when they're growing with the peas and with the barley and oats, they are a lot easier to handle than they are on their own.
I'm wondering what it gives you as well, because you're no longer going out spraying pesticides over the area where the water well is. I mean, does that give you some kind of peace of mind as well?
Yeah, well, I know sure it does. I know it wasn't really going to be affecting it anyway, but still it does give you a bit of peace of mind, yeah, that you're not, well, just the fact that you're not handling the chemicals on a weekly basis, probably more so. You know, the summers can get a bit embarrassing, alright. You'd be walking around with very little to be doing, and you see all these tractors and sprayers and spreaders running, tearing up and down the road, and you're there thinking to yourself, what am I doing here, sitting there, like, doing very, very little, really, only walking around.
But has it been worth your while? Are you still making a living from your farm?
Oh yeah, well, I have an off-farm income as well now, to be fair, but like I always had that, whereas the farm now actually probably inputs more into the living than the farm used to.
Mark, it's the end of the farm walk. It was very successful, I have to say. There was great feedback from everyone here, and really interesting kind of thoughts and ideas going around as well. How did you feel it went? Were you happy with it?
Yeah, I was very happy with how it went. There was a good interest in what we're doing, good interest and a lot of camaraderie between some of the other organic farmers that were here and bouncing ideas off each other. Being able to invest in the future in a farm is a very big thing, and the way I seen it going before I was organic, a small farm of 47 acres, I didn't see there was any economic benefit in taking land, leasing land. As organic, there is benefit in leasing land. You can compete for leased land. So
you think the premiums you get from being in the organic scheme help you to lease land, essentially, because you get, 220 per hectare for conversion, and then I think it's 170 once you've fully converted. Do you think that gives, because a lot of people would say, give out about young farmers having a better edge, say, for buying land because they have more tax incentives, but you think the organic premium helps you, or the organic?
It's not only the payment in the post. Yes, the payment in the post is a good acknowledgement of what you're doing, but farming still has to be viable. You still have to get what, for producing food. You still have to be incentivized in the end product to be producing food, and to me, organics is really about producing that premium product. And yes, the scheme money is good, but it is It's essential in the first few years. That conversion money is essential in the first few years, because it takes a farmer a good 4 to 5 years really to get their head around the whole thing and to get the system working, and whatever system works best for them, to actually find it.
Can we take a step back for a minute, back to your milling wheat? How on earth do you think? Do you know what? Actually, no one's really growing milling wheat in Ireland. I'll do that. Do we have a mill? Do you have a mill? No, you didn't have a mill. No. So just walk me through that process.
The mindset.
The mindset. Well, when did that mindset start, and how did it go about?
It sort of changed when you knew that you could year on year grow really good quality wheat. Yeah. Really good quality crops in Monaghan, like
you're doing it with Micheál Rafferty as well, who's
yes.
been milling around, and he was talking about kind of the food provenance and the food market as well. And it's kind of a different idea. No, it's not just wheat for animal feed; it's wheat for human consumption.
But you needed to be able to know what the quality of your grain was year on year, and like we were testing our grain year on year before this.
And did you build a mill, or what did you do?
The two of us got together and set up. The biggest thing was actually getting set up. Getting a mill isn't a big problem. Getting ancillary stuff around it isn't that big of a problem. Storage facilities, that's more of a problem. There's lots of hurdles. There is lots of hurdles. But the actual end product is really worth it.
And in terms was getting financing together, was that an issue?
Not really, no. The local enterprise office was extremely good, in that we're actually, between the two farms, there is a food hub, and that there was a unit available. There was a few units available at the time, but they're all actually full now. But the local enterprise office was very good on startups and very good on, absolutely loved our ideas. And they think it's the future, and they're very, very excited about it.
And I guess between you, how many acres of wheat are you growing now?
We're only really growing, between the two of us, I would say about 90 acres of wheat.
You're averaging 3 tonnes per acre?
It would be averaging between 2 and 3. Between 2.5, I'd say, And
in comparison to conventional, for someone who's not used to it, if you were conventional, how much wheat per year?
If you were growing spring wheat conventionally, you probably might top out at 3.5 to 4. If you were growing winter wheat, which is mainly for animal feed, you'd be getting 5.
But they're not getting the premium that you're getting.
They're not getting the premium they're getting, that we're getting. But we also don't have the inputs that they are putting into it. They are putting serious inputs into that to get that, to hit that, those targets.
And you have some, you have some lovely marketing as well. You've got a lovely slick Instagram page. You've got a Twitter page. You've got some lovely bags of flour there, and I'm taking some home with me. And you have some kind of famous customers in terms of the Happy Pear. I see them a lot on Instagram using your produce. So how has that been? Have you had the demand?
Oh yeah, the demand's really good. The quality of the product sells the product, and it's what we're seeing. And basically the consumer wants to buy Irish if he can, and basically if we can provide a really good quality product, and the consumer knows where the food's coming from, that's a really, really big help.
And in terms of, is it restaurants, is it bakeries, is it private customers, because you sell online?
Everybody. It's from restaurants to bakeries to shops, selling the flour into shops. It's everything. Online's good, yeah. And
I guess, so for the people here on the farm walk today, that might be thinking or considering of doing their own little foray into maybe kind of their own business, what do you think? Because you said before that you were part-time a farmer. Are you a full-time farmer now, or how is it working for you?
Absolutely full-time. Been full-time farmer really since 2016. Took a few years, to get back in, get the farm really, really going. You had to know. It took a few years to, this is working. Oh, but will it stop? No, this is still working. you know, and it's getting better and better. And the way I see it every year, it does seem to be improving every year and year. Even the tillage, the cattle, everything seems to be starting to click better.
And is that a nice feeling, say, if you have family as well, that you've created something, you've created a business that they could potentially take over?
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Like, you know, the girls are really interested in the mill, they're really interested in the flour, is one thing. They're really interested in the cattle as well, and it's hopefully going to be good going for the future.
It's a lovely way to maybe we'll end it there, will we? I'll head home with some flour and bake something nice. That'd be nice. Mark, thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
No problem at all, Hannah. No problem. Thank you.
If you are listening at home, this was the Organic Matters podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. And if you want to find out more about organic food, such as Mark's lovely organic flour, or anything else, or organic farming, do please visit the Irish Organic Association, www.irishorganicassociation.ie, to find out more. I've been Hannah Quinn-Mulligan. Thank you very much for your company. Tune in or subscribe online, and there will be another podcast coming next Saturday.